there, Vlad here. Part 3 of this Madventure. Let's jump right in. Culture's been running some version of this since the beginning of Madvent. I can't imagine a Madvent without this. Something that's important to me with Madvent is the social aspect. Playing through a game each day and knowing there's a bunch of other people enjoying that game as well. The People's Sky is sort of a proof, a ledger of everyone who's played through during the time of the main event. Not just the Let's Players or the streamers or even the community members in the Discord discussing each game as they play, but everyone. I'll need to come back and check this day out at the end of the season to see how full the sky gets. I was really excited to play this one. It's by Alexander Krut, the guy who worked so hard to bring us Madvent 5. As mentioned in the previous video, they essentially had no experience making games. The only thing on their itch besides Madvent 5 now is some sort of test build of their character controller and how to do 3D audio, which they make extensive use of in this tiny little game. It's pretty quiet and somber as you explore this character's humble abode, looking at their stuff, getting small clues as to where they are in life. It paints a tragic picture of a lonely man, just pushing through life because they don't have it in them to commit to the eternal nothing. I find it interesting how Alexander and I both made our first Madvent games about people who are on the edge, feeling isolated and hopeless after losing everything they cared about. But where my game What a Wonderful Life indulged in those dour feelings, and the only end in the original build was to end it, The Loneliest Night of the Year has a much more hopeful ending. After so much time, there's a knock on the door, and you have no choice but to answer it, where someone, presumably a friend, has come to visit. Often all you need is just someone to reach out and be there. I get the feeling Alex put a lot of themselves into this game, and it's so fitting that the person who knocks is voiced by Dinobit, the co-lead on Madvent 5, who, to my understanding, became a good friend of Alex over the course of their time working together. The game's really short and simple, but the atmosphere is solid, and the emotions are raw. I think they did a great job with it, and I'm really excited to see what Alex does next. The only thing I've struggled with more than playing this game has been writing about it. My first draft was full of venom, built up after putting hours into trying to meet this game halfway, but each new attempt was met with some new game-breaking bug that forced me to restart from the beginning. Falling through the map, menus getting locked up, key items not spawning. There have been a good handful of games this Madvent that were a little frustrating at first flush, but once I figured them out, they were great, and I wanted this to be another instance of that. But eventually I had to accept that I wasn't going to see the end of this demo. The game is extremely ambitious. The big selling point, the thing that makes this stand out against other survival horrors, is the hypothermia mechanics. Just a good old natural horror. In the few attempts I made that didn't end in game-breaking bugs, they were instead ended by exposure to these unclear mechanics. The game is full of notes trying to teach you how things work, but what's written on them and my lived experiences vary wildly. For example, the game tells you to check the color of your flesh to see what your remaining health is. Red flesh is good, purple cold, and gray you're at death's door. Solid concept, but due to the game's distant fixed camera angles and post-processing effects, it's difficult to really see your flesh at any given moment. Although sometimes you get a free cam, and in theory, that means you could swing the camera around to see, but not if you're running. When you're running, it's locked to your back, and considering the death timer hovering over you, you never not want to be running. Speaking of running, the maps are so big and the running is so slow, it's not very engaging to traverse the landscape. Even less so when the cold slows you down to a snail's pace. The best and the worst part of this game is the flashback, where you're made to run down a barren path for 5 real-life minutes. I dreaded this colossal waste of time so much I tried circumventing it in a later playthrough, only for the game to force me into it. I do like how it's diegetic to our protagonists that they too want not to remember this tragic 5-minute walk. Now in the game's defense, apparently the snowmobile you see Flashback Man fixing is drivable. However, the game doesn't tell you that you can drive snowmobiles at that point, and so it wasn't even something I considered an option. And watching other Let's Plays, I noticed a lot of other players doing the exact same thing I did, which is just walking down the path designed for a vehicle on foot. I also noticed it was very common for people to get on top of the bridge and jump down, skipping the most important and best scene in the game. Luckily, due to so many attempts, instead of going on top of the bridge and skipping the scene, I tried going under the bridge, and there you stumble across our protagonist's wife's corpse. The game tells you, oh, I need to find a pulse. So you interact with the corpse, putting you into the game's examination mechanic. But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find an interactable. It was a fantastic way of telling me through game mechanics that there wasn't one. Although, to be fair, I don't need the game mechanics to tell me that this is a corpse. I mean, the texture work on her face is so harrowing. I really wish the game was filled with more imagery like this. Once you're done touching dead bodies, you get the lowdown of what happened. Uncertain if this is meant to be a psychological horror twist or if it's just this early build, but the scene is filled with so many inconsistencies against what we're told happened. He says his daughter was in the back seat and now she's under the water somehow, even though the car isn't. Plus, how did the accident happen? Did the bridge give way? Where's the rubble? Was it ice? Was it a fight on Poipus? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of time spent on the responsibility this character feels for the events that took place, but I suppose we'll need to play the whole game to know if we're playing that guilt straight and it was just an accident that he has to live with, or if there was something more nefarious happening. Anyway, I don't think it's particularly beneficial for me to be super granular about every little thing, so I'm going to do a quick lightning round. Like, the combat was difficult to figure out. Usually survival horrors have a ready weapon button and then action swings, but here, there's just a dedicated swing button that only works when you're dead stopped, and I only figured it out because I got cornered. QTEs don't really add anything to the experience. I would rather not see them in the full release, but if they have to be there, I hope there's an accessibility setting that auto-succeeds them. I don't feel like any of the items improved my heat. Speaking of improving heat, I started a fire, but it was so tiny, and I was exposed, so I don't think it helped either. It's just really frustrating that like the core mechanic is about keeping warm, and yet I don't feel like I have any actionable ways to stay warm. I don't like the lack of UI for your health and cold. I understand wanting to keep these things diegetic to the world, but since you already have a non-diegetic inventory screen, I feel like it would be nice just to add, you know, classical survival horror UI elements to the inventory menu so you can see what your health and cold are at. The clarity would go a long way to decrease the difficulty of just guessing based on body language and color. There's probably more points I'm missing that I've written down amongst all the drafts, but I think I'm just going to move on with my life. Overall, the game is visually pleasant. There are some cool ideas hiding in here, and I get what they're going for, but I worry certain design choices and how they end up being executed will really make or break if I ever actually return to this. I'll try to keep an open mind. Maybe when the game has more extensive playtesting that squashes the game-breaking bugs, then it could be something really neat down the line, but unfortunately my experience with this demo was dreadful. I'll start by saying that this game is visually stunning. The main character is a treat of a model, and the cars are simple but fun, and the city is a vibe. There's even a nice gentle music playing. The description says that you can use E to interact, but after 15 minutes of moving up and down every wall, I couldn't find a single interaction point. And that's because it turns out that the game is unfinished. The dev apologized for missing the deadline and made the promise that there is an update coming, hopefully before all these videos come out. And I'll add a little addendum to the last video. But we'll see. I'll certainly play it, I just don't know if I'll cover it in the video. I can only cover the game as it stands, and as it stands, it's not bad. It sort of harkens back to the original pitch of Madvent, which was 24 dioramas to vibe in. That's more or less all this game has, because it's just a couple of streets that you can wander up and down, ping-ponging between two alleyways, basically. It's a pretty game to look at, and it has a nice atmosphere. It's just lacking in the gameplay. And for that matter, the description also states that it's a narrative game about being lost in the city, but there's no narrative currently. It's just you wandering up and down these two streets. I'm going to guess that the thing that's going to bother a lot of people is the framing. The description and the controls infer that there's going to be more to do, maybe something that explains why the game is the promise of Glasshouses, but even if this year's Madvent season enjoyers didn't get to enjoy that particular game as it was intended, hopefully future Madvent enjoyers, the people who discover Madvent years down the line, will get a better version of this game. Which, to reiterate, the game isn't bad, it's just a diorama. A cool little detective story full of placeholder art. Presuming it was a choice between making the game function and making the game pretty, I'm glad they chose function, as the story and gameplay, while not super complex, is solid. Also worth noting that this mad lad made their own engine, which probably also contributed to the need to focus on function over form. But back to the game as it plays. Basically, there's been a murder aboard this legally distinct Star Trek ship, and it's up to you to discern which of these 8 people committed the crime. You can ask them 2 questions, pressure them with doubt, and finally try your luck with evidence to build a story. If you use the wrong evidence on the wrong person, they'll clam up on you entirely. It's not a very deep interrogation system. Once you recognize that this little bar beneath their portrait basically tells you how many times you need to doubt them in order to get info, and I think this orange line is there if evidence needs to be checked or not. You only have access to 6 of the 8 suspects, so technically you need to choose wisely. Unfortunately, the evidence on the table, the introductory spiel you get telling you what you're looking for in that evidence, and especially the hint from the bartender, points to Dr. Thorne and Commander Vaughn. And you really don't need to talk to anyone else to get the full story. But you do have to go through all 3 rounds of questioning to get to the ending questionnaire, which is also an unfortunate way to prove your detective skills, as even if you have no clue to the answer of the question, you have a 25% chance of getting it right. And I feel like paying attention at all rockets that up high enough that you could probably guess without any sort of interrogation or evidence, though you do need 100% passing grade to avoid war. 5 out of 7 ain't good enough. I think the game needed more red herrings, more opportunities, more motives, more means, things to obfuscate who really did it. Talking to everyone, I think only 1 additional suspect had a motive, but no opportunity or means, and then 2 of the other suspects had the means, but not the motive, though they could have had the opportunity with some shenanigans. Like, that was something I was expecting in the evidence, that the people who entered the victim's room weren't the people who did it. Like that somebody used their data card, but you'd only find that out by talking to them, accusing them with the evidence, and then them revealing the info that makes the evidence change. Again, the story is solid, it makes sense, just usually for interesting detectives' tales, you want to add clues to throw off the scent, add some twists, some turns, yada yada. Maybe these are all things that I've wanted to do but just didn't have time. Regardless, I did enjoy my time on the USS. I don't think we ever got a name for this ship. I enjoy Ruben's ability to do like sci-fi stuff, so I can't wait to see what comes next. I saw a bit of a whip in the server at some point. I guess the consequences of the actions if you fail this game. I was promised a jump scare that never came, but that promise alone made me tense. The aesthetic was great too, very crunchy, and the gameplay, well, most of it is you sledding down the longest hill ever. At first I was really enjoying it. It reminded me of sledding at night, which is such a treat. Made me sad that I don't live near a hill that I could do night sledding at anymore. But the hill just keeps going and going. You defy physics going up and down. All to say, the sledding was a little longer than it needed to be, but I really loved the feelings that the sledding evoked. And it was inspiring me to think about making my own sledding horror game. Maybe next Madvent. Anyhow, while sledding, you're avoiding obstacles, not for your own sake, but to keep the porridge from spilling. I'm guessing if you don't have enough when you reach the bottom of the hill, the gnome who slurps it all up won't fall asleep and then he'll eat you. But I'm a Tony Hawk's Pro Sledder and made it down with only 1 bump, and honestly it was kind of bullshit. Back to the bottom, the whole shed sequence is very tense. You walk in, and the boxes are set up in such a way that they create these angles, and you get the feeling that something spooky is about to happen. You walk through, you put a bowl down, you ring the bell 3 times, and then you get the fuck out of there. Just before you reach the exit, the door shuts and the lights go out. Oh boy, it's happening, it's coming. You hear it slurping, and then it starts breathing real heavy. But where else can you go but back to the table? Good news, it's sleeping. Bad news, the key for the exit's in the bowl. You reach in, waiting for it to grab you, but it doesn't. Then you open the hatch leading to another maze. Okay, he's gonna chase me down here, right? You hear some movement upstairs, but before anything happens, you manage to find the exit. Back outside, and oh gosh, it's over. Jump scare any second. Move as quickly as you can to that sled, turn it around and ride away. Still waiting for the shoe to drop, but then suddenly the screen starts to fade. I really like this one. It has great tension, makes me nostalgic for the old country. My only kind of complaint is just like the length of the hill. Some more steep slopes for speed would have been fun, but I feel like those are minor nitpicks for what is otherwise a great submission. Oh dear, now we're on the last leg of this journey. I'm excited to see what all comes next, but I'm also not ready for it to be over. Until then, consider subscribing if you're playing through Madvent. I'd love hearing how yours is going. Go check out the Haunted PS1 Curator page on Steam, link in the description. Maybe wishlist my upcoming game, Bonefire Effigy. Consider buying my collection of short games, Vladimere Lhore, yada yada. Anyway, thanks for watching. Till the end, see you soon.